Humanity has always stared into the endless dark, pointing its telescopes at the heavens, waiting for the faintest whisper that we are not alone. For generations, we've searched for a flicker of light, a pulse of sound, a single undeniable signal from some far-off star. We expected the message to come from a distant galaxy or an unseen civilization. We never imagined it would arrive from something passing right through our own solar system. But that is exactly what happened. It didn't begin with a radio transmission or a hidden code. It began with an object, an interstellar wanderer cutting straight across our neighborhood of space. Astronomers named it 3I/Atlas, or as the public came to call it, 3I Atlas. For months, its strange emerald glow fascinated scientists and amateurs alike. It pulsed with energy. It defied every model of how comets behave. And yet no one could have guessed what was about to unfold. At first, Atlas was just another mystery, an outlier to study, catalog, and move on from. But the longer it was observed, the stranger it became. Its green light brightened and dimmed at precisely timed intervals, every 173 minutes. The pattern was too exact to dismiss as coincidence. Instruments across the globe picked up the pulses. They weren't just bursts of radiation diffusing into the void. They were clean, measured, deliberate. Still, the idea that a comet could be signaling was too far-fetched to accept. Until one day, the pulses changed. This time the energy wasn't scattered outward, but focused. A compressed beam aimed directly at Mars. Orbiters circling the red planet registered a sudden spike in radiation, strong enough to penetrate the thin Martian atmosphere and light it up in shimmering green for several minutes. At first, scientists explained it away. A solar flare, an instrument glitch, a freak alignment. But then it happened again. Same duration, same direction, same power. The conclusion became inescapable. Atlas was sending a message. Not random, not blind, directed. And then came the impossible part. Mars answered. Almost immediately after Atlas's focused beam reached the red planet, satellites began to record electromagnetic bursts rising from the surface of Mars itself. These pulses matched Atlas's frequency, but were not simple echoes. They were altered, transformed, modulated. What looked at first like a reflection revealed itself, under closer analysis, to be something else entirely, an intentional reply. Spectrograms showed the pulses delayed at precise intervals, shifted in frequency, structured with mathematical regularity. Earth-based telescopes detected faint harmonics bouncing back across space, as if Mars were amplifying the signal and sending it onward. To those who pored over the data, the pattern was unmistakable. Atlas had asked a question. Mars had answered. Suddenly, a planet long thought to be silent and lifeless had become a participant in an interplanetary dialogue. Its thin skies and dusty ground vibrated with a message from beyond the stars. Humanity wasn't just observing a cosmic event anymore. We were witnessing a conversation. The mystery deepened when seismic monitors on Mars, relics left behind by past missions, began recording activity unlike anything ever measured. The tremors were not chaotic, but rhythmic, perfectly synchronized with the pulses from Atlas. These vibrations reached deep into the Martian mantle, as if the very crust of the planet had become a resonant instrument singing in harmony with the interstellar visitor. When the frequencies were mapped into spectrograms, an even stranger detail emerged. The pulses formed geometric shapes, spirals, hexagons, triangles, identical to the luminous patterns already observed in Atlas's glowing coma. This was no accident. The red planet wasn't simply reflecting energy. It was speaking. Some researchers speculated that something buried deep beneath the Martian surface, an ancient structure, a subsurface ocean, a dormant system, had been awakened by Atlas's call. Others went further, suggesting Mars itself might be alive in ways we'd never imagined, resonating like a vast organism stirred from slumber by a signal from the stars. Whatever the truth, one fact was undeniable. Mars was responding, and Earth began to feel the echo. Radio telescopes worldwide started picking up faint harmonics, identical to the Martian replies. Patterns embedded in the static matched Atlas's signal, but altered by Mars's response. Independent researchers posted their findings online, showing eerie geometries hidden in the bursts, only to watch their accounts vanish within hours. Government agencies issued no explanations. NASA remained silent. Yet the truth spread. Humanity was no longer a bystander. We were eavesdropping on a cosmic dialogue, a conversation not meant for us, but unfolding in plain sight. As the patterns grew stronger, as Mars's signals became clearer, a chilling realization took hold. Whatever Atlas had asked, Mars had answered, and the echoes of that exchange were already reaching Earth. Even Mars's tiny moons, once considered insignificant, became part of the phenomenon. Phobos and Deimos, long thought to be captured asteroids, suddenly behaved like active participants. Instruments aboard orbiters detected Phobos, reflecting bursts of electromagnetic radiation perfectly synchronized with Mars's pulses, like a relay node amplifying the exchange. Deimos, fainter and farther out, glowed intermittently with an emerald sheen visible through telescopes on Earth as brief flashes against the black space. These were not random reflections of sunlight. They were timed, structured, deliberate. The entire Martian system appeared to have awakened, as though every rock and every orbiting body had been waiting for Atlas's call. At first, the rovers on Mars seemed unaffected. They continued their daily routines, measuring dust, capturing images, transmitting data. But as the pulses intensified, one by one their feeds began to fail. The first sent back corrupted files filled with streaks of green static. Another transmitted a final blurred image of the horizon illuminated by an unnatural glow before going offline for good. Engineers on Earth scrambled to regain control, sending command after command. The machines remained silent. Then came the most disturbing detail. One rover transmitted a single burst of data moments before shutting down, a stream of binary code which, when decoded, formed repeating prime numbers identical to the patterns hidden in Atlas's pulses. The implication was impossible to ignore. The rovers hadn't malfunctioned randomly. They had been pulled into the resonance, compelled to echo the same mathematical signature linking Atlas and Mars. In their final moments, our mechanical explorers had become part of the signal. Soon after, Earth itself began to intercept strange transmissions carried on the interplanetary background noise. Radio telescopes in Australia, South Africa, and Chile picked up faint bursts, matching both Atlas's frequency and the Martian echoes. At first, the signals appeared as static, but careful analysis revealed sequences repeating in prime numbers, the same pattern again. Even more unsettling was the discovery that the signals grew stronger whenever Mars rotated certain regions into view, as though specific parts of its surface were acting as transmission nodes. Independent astronomers rushed to publish their findings, only for their work to vanish from servers, websites, and forums. Still, enough evidence remained to confirm the unimaginable. The dialogue between Atlas and Mars was no longer confined to space. It had reached Earth, and if we could hear it, perhaps it was meant for us. As the exchange intensified, the skies themselves became a canvas for Atlas's message. Observers reported shimmering patterns rippling across the Martian atmosphere, visible even through amateur telescopes. Spirals, lattice-like grids, hexagonal arrays shimmered like fleeting constellations etched in light, appearing for minutes before fading away. Satellite imagery confirmed the displays, showing them aligned precisely with the rhythm of the pulses exchanged between Atlas and Mars. These geometries were not random. They carried ratios matching mathematical constants, golden spirals, and structural symmetries found in architecture across human civilizations. The implication was haunting. Atlas's message, amplified by Mars, was now being broadcast visually as well as electromagnetically, written across the skies in symbols that spoke a universal language. Humanity, once a passive observer, was now staring at signs that seemed designed to be recognized, not just by Mars, but by us. This was not an accident of physics. It was communication. We had waited for decades, scanning distant stars for a signal, imagining alien voices calling across the void. But the call did not come from a far-off galaxy. It came from a wanderer passing through our own system, and from a world next door that we thought was dead. Now that call is echoing on Earth itself. No one knows what Atlas asked or what Mars answered. No one knows what the pulses mean, what the patterns represent, or why the entire Martian system seems to have joined the conversation. Governments stay silent. Data disappears. Yet the resonance continues, growing stronger with every cycle. Perhaps it is a warning. Perhaps an invitation. Perhaps something beyond our ability to interpret. All we know is this. For the first time in human history, we are witnessing a dialogue between a visitor from the stars and a neighboring planet. And whatever's happening out there, our world is no longer just a spectator. We have been waiting for a message. Now, the message is here that IT began with tremors. For centuries, Mars had been the archetype of a silent world. Frozen, airless, still. But as the signals from Atlas intensified, the red planet's heartbeat changed. Seismic monitors lit up with readings no one had ever recorded before. What had once been a quiet, motionless crust now pulsed with rhythmic quakes, timed perfectly with the transmissions from the interstellar visitor. At first, scientists tried to explain it away. Minor tectonic shifts, delayed aftershocks of ancient impacts, the settling of frozen rock. But the patterns were undeniable. These tremors weren't random. They were structured vibrations traveling deep into the Martian mantle, as though the planet itself had become a resonant instrument amplifying Atlas's signal. Then came the breakthrough that shattered any lingering doubt. When spectrograms of the seismic waves were translated into visual data, the patterns matched the same geometric symbols that had glowed for months in Atlas's emerald coma: spirals, triangles, and hexagons etched into the very heartbeat of Mars. For the first time, experts were forced to consider a possibility that bordered on the unthinkable. Mars was no longer simply echoing Atlas's call. It was participating, shaping the signal with its own geological voice. Something deep beneath its crust had been activated, and the red planet was no longer just a passive target. It was awake. And then came the phenomenon no one could ignore, a display visible not only to orbiting spacecraft or ground-based observatories, but to the human eye. Astronomers and amateur stargazers alike began reporting faint emerald glows rising above the Martian horizon, shimmering like auroras, but far too structured to be natural. These luminous veils spread across the atmosphere, curling into vast arcs of light visible from Earth with even modest equipment. The glow wasn't constant. It pulsed in tandem with Atlas's transmissions, as though each burst of energy painted a new streak across the Martian sky. For hours, the red planet seemed cloaked in a veil of emerald fire, a living testament to the connection it now shared with the interstellar object. Some dismissed the spectacle as atmospheric ionization, a natural reaction to high-energy particles. But others pointed out the impossible precision. The auroras bent themselves into recognizable forms: concentric circles, ladder-like rungs, spirals twisting into infinity. It was as if the sky itself had become a screen, and Mars was projecting back the signal for anyone watching. While the world stared in awe at Mars's emerald crown, a quieter, more terrifying effect began unfolding here on Earth. Radio telescopes, radar installations, even civilian communication arrays began to experience sudden blackouts, precisely timed with the pulses exchanged between Atlas and Mars. Entire data streams collapsed into static before rebooting minutes later, leaving behind only fragments of corrupted files filled with streaks of green noise. Engineers described the disruptions as unlike any interference they had ever encountered, spreading across multiple frequencies as if deliberately designed to overwhelm. What made it worse was the pattern. Each blackout was preceded by a faint echo of the Martian resonance, as though the planet's response was bleeding across space and infecting our systems. The chilling realization spread quickly. If Earth's instruments were now reacting to the exchange, we were no longer outside observers. We had become part of the resonance. And the question no one dared to ask aloud was, What if our machines weren't failing at random? What if they were being drawn into the signal, just as the Martian rovers had been before? When fragments of data from the interrupted transmissions were finally reconstructed, what they revealed sent shock waves through the scientific community. Buried in the noise of the pulses was a structure too precise to be natural. Sequences of prime numbers, repeating ratios, harmonics that mirrored not only geometry, but also the very languages of logic humanity itself had developed. Mathematicians confirmed that the embedded codes resembled the kind of universal markers scientists have long theorized an intelligent civilization might use to communicate. The resonance wasn't just energy, it was information. But what unsettled everyone most was where the variations came from. The original pulse belonged to Atlas. The modulation, the alterations that turned static into structure code, came from Mars. The red planet was not merely reflecting a message. It was transforming it, answering back with a voice of its own. For the first time in human history, we were witnessing a conversation between a visitor from beyond the stars and a planet within our solar system. And humanity was listening in on a dialogue that was never meant for us. As seismic data from Mars continued to pour in, researchers uncovered something that pushed the mystery to new depths. The rhythmic tremors didn't simply shake the surface. They bounced back from deep within the planet, as though hitting vast hollow chambers hidden beneath the crust. By mapping the wave reflections, scientists identified patterns suggesting enormous subsurface voids arranged in geometric alignments, structures too ordered to be the result of natural geology. Some claimed these were remnants of ancient volcanic systems, but others insisted the formations looked engineered, like colossal resonant chambers built to amplify signals. The chilling implication was that Mars had not simply become a participant in Atlas's dialogue. It had always been designed for it, a planet tuned to awaken only when the right frequency called across the stars. And now that call had come. Meanwhile, something strange began happening with Phobos, Mars's innermost moon. Long regarded as a doomed satellite spiraling closer to Mars every century, its descent suddenly accelerated. Tracking stations confirmed that Phobos's orbit was no longer stable. It was subtly adjusting in synchrony with the pulses exchanged between Atlas and Mars. Even more bizarre, high-resolution imagery showed faint glowing fissures across its surface, like veins of emerald light spreading outward from beneath its dusty crust. To some, this was evidence of stress fractures caused by tidal forces. But to others, it looked like activation, as though Phobos was no longer just a rock, but a mechanism coming alive, responding to the same signal Mars now echoed. The idea took root that Phobos, long thought destined to crash into Mars, might actually have been designed for a different purpose entirely, one that was now beginning to unfold before our eyes. While scientists struggled to keep pace with the cascade of anomalies around Mars, Earth itself began experiencing phenomena that defied explanation. In remote locations, deserts, mountaintops, even oceans, people reported seeing faint green auroras shimmering far from the poles, glowing softly in the night sky where no aurora should exist. These luminous veils pulsed with the same rhythm as Atlas's signal, synchronized with the Martian response. Amateur radio operators captured bursts of static filled with repeating tones, sounds many described as hauntingly melodic, almost like a cosmic chant. For the first time, humanity wasn't just observing Mars's transformation from afar. We were feeling its effects here on Earth. It was as though the dialogue had spilled across the void, dragging our world into a resonance we could neither control nor escape. And the terrifying thought began to spread. If Mars had answered Atlas, could Earth soon be compelled to do the same? As the anomalies mounted, scholars and historians began revisiting ancient records with a new sense of urgency. Civilizations across Earth, Sumerians, Egyptians, Mayans, had left behind myths of twin stars, green fires in the heavens, and gods descending upon the red world in cycles of destruction and rebirth. At the time, these were dismissed as symbolic stories, metaphors for agricultural cycles or spiritual beliefs. But when cross-referenced with the timing of Atlas's pulses and Mars's responses, the parallels became chillingly precise. Carvings showed twin orbs linked by beams of light. Tablets described a green serpent that whispered to the red planet until it roared awake. Some inscriptions even included geometric symbols, identical to those emerging from Atlas's resonance. It seemed less like mythology and more like memory, a record of humanity's ancestors witnessing the same phenomenon thousands of years ago. If true, this meant Atlas's arrival, and its dialogue with Mars was not a unique event. It was a cycle, and now it had returned. For months, humanity had watched 3I Atlas defy the laws of nature. It split into two fragments, one targeting the Sun and the other Mars. And from that moment, the impossible became undeniable. The pulses, once thought to be random, revealed themselves as signals, directed, deliberate, intelligent. And then came the answer. Mars, the silent red world we believed barren, responded. Through its atmosphere, through its trembling crust, through its moons, it echoed back the call of an interstellar visitor. But this was not just a call in response. It was a dialogue. Seismic waves carved geometry into the heartbeat of Mars. Auroras painted mathematical symbols across its thin skies. Even Phobos shifted in orbit, glowing with fissures of emerald light as though awakening from a slumber that had lasted for millennia. And as the resonance grew, it reached us. Earth itself began to flicker with echoes. Green auroras in places where no auroras should exist, instruments collapsing under interference, whispers of prime numbers, and spirals hidden in the static. The dialogue had spilled across the void, and whether we wanted to or not, we had become part of it. The ancient records now look less like myths and more like warnings, memories left behind by civilizations that witnessed the same cycle long before us. They spoke of a serpent of green light that whispered to Mars, of twin fires in the heavens, of awakenings that reshaped worlds. And if those stories are true, then Atlas has not come to our system by chance. It has returned as it always has, as part of a process older than humanity itself. NASA remains silent, burying data, cutting signals, locking down every trace that leaks. But their silence is an admission. They know the truth. 3I Atlas is not a comet, not a rogue wanderer, not an accident of the cosmos. It is a messenger, a trigger, a presence that stirs dormant worlds into resonance and forces planets to speak. And now that Mars has answered, the question is no longer whether Atlas is alive. The question is what comes next. Because if Mars has awakened, and if Earth is already beginning to echo its song, then the cycle has only just begun. Atlas sent the signal. Mars answered back. And now, with each passing pulse, humanity must face the terrifying possibility that the next response will come not from a distant world, but from our own.